Mr. Menachie Jr., your family has a history of service in this state. You know New Mexico is proud of its cultural traditions. But year after year, whether it's student test scores or health care availability, this state winds up at the bottom of so many lists, and it is embarrassing. Here's the question. Do you think New Mexico has an attitude problem and also an inferiority complex? And if so, what do you do about it as a governor?
I don't know about the inferiority complex, but yes, we do have an attitude problem. We need to have an attitude that values education. I think we do value children as our most precious resource. We need to translate that into valuing education, and that doesn't mean putting dollar values on it. That means valuing it as a community, as individuals, as parents, where we prioritize the opportunity for our children to receive an education. That's something that will never be taken away from them. That's something that if they don't have it, they will be handicapped for the rest of their life. And we need to change that attitude, just like we need to have a pro-business attitude. My suggestion on changing some of these key attitudes, it starts at the community level. It starts with the news media in New Mexico. It starts and it continues all the way up through the legislature and the leadership of the governor's office. These attitudes are pervasive, and they can be changed. They can be changed with information, education, tying the threads together so people understand. When we don't produce natural gas, we don't have more schools. That's a simple thread to tie together, but I don't think we do a good job doing that. We need to tie together the concept that if we don't have a diverse economy, we won't have revenue for essential services. We need to tie that together, all the way from the ground level up through the governor's office.
I would agree to some extent that there's an inferiority complex, but certainly there's an acceptance of the status quo. And the status quo is unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. Have half the kids that don't get out of high school? 100 years ago in an agricultural economy, you get away with it. You can bale hay and not have to read and write. But in the 21st century economy in 2010, you got to read and write, and you got to have a little bit more on the ball than that. And we have, and that's our labor pool. So it's inextricably linked to economic development. 62% of the state's budget goes into education or thereabouts. And we get nothing from it but a declining statistical reports where we're on the bottom of every list. And what do we hear? We want more money. Throw more money at the problem. That's the solution. That's the wrong answer. If I'm your governor, we're going to have accountability for education. I mean, serious accountability. Everything's on the table. Everything. Because the education lobby and the education professionals will tell you, oh, this is the way we do it. Well, that's the wrong answer, because the way you're doing it isn't getting us results. I want accountability. I want better pay for teachers, but I want the ability to fire them. I want school choice, and I want results. And believe me, if I'm your governor, I'm going to get them. Thank you.
Since I have served, the education budget has increased by $1 billion. The number of students we serve has increased by 3,200. The number of adult employees has increased by 5,400. When I was first elected, we were 49th in the nation in math, science, and engineering. Now we're 50th. Yes, we have an attitudinal problem. And that attitudinal problem is really maybe not where you think it is. One of our problems is in the South Valley of Albuquerque, where parents, especially Hispanic parents, do not feel welcome in their schools. And so they don't ask questions, and they don't push their children because there's no one to give them the support. I resent that in the harshest terms. Our kids are smart, and I don't care where they go to school. They are being systematically denied access to knowledge. We simply have to turn this on its head. You know, the way that we have taught for years and years, and I'm looking at our audience, most of us went to classrooms where we had a lecture type of format, and there were 5 rows of 6 desks. You know, times have changed. We have taught our children to learn in different ways. Right now, our children have to be able to read, not in third grade. That is totally unacceptable. If a child is not reading by first grade, if you don't recognize that you have a problem, you have a problem. And we need to remediate then. But to be able to offer access to curriculum, if we don't have it, I promise you, it is available today on the internet. We need to get it to our students today. Our kids deserve it.
I actually think we have a dependency problem in New Mexico. We are all, or at least the majority of our population, is dependent on government. We depend on government to do everything for us. You know, government is, the growth industry right now in New Mexico is the government. If you want a job, get a job with the government. I think that's the growth industry in the United States. For every 100 private sector jobs, we have 24 just in state and local government. Something is fundamentally wrong with that picture when we depend on our government to do everything for us. You look at public education. We spend almost $5 billion a year on public education in New Mexico, up to $14,000 for a single student. You could put your kid or every child in the state in private school for that kind of money. So the answer isn't more money. The answer is competition in education if we're talking about our children. The answer are things like school vouchers, not tax credits. When you consider that most of our half of our population doesn't pay taxes, a tax credit doesn't do anybody any good. But a voucher, more support for charter schools. We've got 4,000 kids waiting to get into charter schools. They're not all perfect, but they do a great job. We need to get vocational training back into our high schools. We've lost that. And you know what? There's nothing wrong for some kids not to go to college, and they ought to be able to get out of college with a career or a trade. And finally, we've got to have merit pay. We've got to develop a system where we can reward the very best in public education and get rid of the very worst.
Absolutely, we have an attitude problem, but that comes from the administration, the Richardson-Dennis administration, and that is unacceptable. You know, we have pay to play. Everyone talks about it as though it's acceptable. We have people who have been convicted, sent to prison. We celebrate a thief. Manny Aragon was convicted and sent to federal prison, and they had a party for him the day before he left to go serve his time. That's an attitude problem that is unacceptable to New Mexicans. I don't believe that we have an inferiority complex. We have wonderful people who live here in this state. That's why you all are so involved in this election, because you're demanding change. You're insisting that we change New Mexico and turn our economy around, that we phase out those job-killing taxes. You're insisting that we decrease the size of our government and quit wasting your money. No, we don't have an inferiority complex, but you are demanding change. And these debates are wonderful because then we get to address issues and our differences between the candidates. And we can go back and forth, Alan, about whether or not it's amnesty. But what that plan did was it proposed 13 million illegal immigrants in this country would be allowed to remain here and would have cost taxpayers $2.6 trillion. And that's bad policy. That is not something that is acceptable. We are a country of laws, and those laws must be enforced.